Though we won't get an updated Iowa football depth chart, we're going to take a stab after what we saw over the weekend. How does the two deep look for the Hawkeyes today? Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We are with you each and every day, your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio in the state of Iowa, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, where you can hear me each weekday from noon to 2, talking the world of sports and lots of Hawkeyes. You can hear me in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, the Quad City, Sioux City, and Des Moines with our flagship 106.3 KXNO, along with on the iHeart Radio app. All right, let's get into it today. I want to talk some basketball a little bit later on as we take a look at this Iowa basketball team, some offseason scuttlebutt, and kind of where this team is as they continue to look for a potential make another move to that roster. We will talk about that a little bit later on. Plus, we're going to take a look today at the depth chart. We're going to take a look at the defense. We start today with the offense. And when we're going through this is what we saw Saturday at Kids Day. This is some information that has been out there that we've been able to kind of get to. Injuries also are a part of this and kind of what has happened there, but kind of painting this picture, because in the past we would get a depth chart that came out when we were at Big Ten football media days. That's not the case this year. We're hoping maybe with Iowa media day last Friday, we're going to get that. Not going to be the case. We're not going to see this now for another week plus until we get to sometimes the Friday before, not the day before, but like 8 days before the first game. That was not the case a season ago. They came out with the game notes on Monday of game week last season. But I know Kirk Ferentz, one thing that he has mentioned to us a couple of different times is we know depth charts in general is not exactly Kirk's thing. I mean, we've seen plenty of times in the past where they have not had a depth chart that makes sense with what we actually see on the playing field, but they're a conversation piece. And I think it's something where we get to know this football team a little bit better on. So we're going to also, when we do this, go back and take a look back at the depth chart in the spring. If you're watching along with this on YouTube, I'll pop that up for you. Hey, hit subscribe. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, really would appreciate that as we're trying to push up to 5,000 subscribers before we get to that first football game. So let's get into it. And with it, the depth chart, we start at quarterback, and this is an easy one. We know Mark Gronowski is the guy, and his backup, I believe, is going to be Hank Brown. Now, Jeremy Hecklinski continues to push. He's going to be right there. Here is that depth chart, though, from back in the spring, where your starter was Brendan Sullivan. Yes, that's what it was. And Hank Brown was the backup last season. Obviously, a little different look now with Mark Gronowski elevating to the top spot. But that's what it looked like going back to the spring depth chart that we received. So Gronowski, Hank Brown, Hank continues to do great things. Live arm, big time future. And when we look towards next season, him and Hecklinski fighting for that starting job is going to be, I think, a huge, huge competition. Let's go next to running back. And of this offensive group, this might be the most difficult because we have a couple of pretty major injuries. Major not in terms of we don't know the scope of them, but when you're trying to put together a depth chart. So Kamari Moulton is the anticipated starter. And I still think there's a pretty big gap between him and everybody else in the coach's eyes going back to last season. What he did a year ago and what turned out to be a backup role was the starter that he was fighting with there in that starting role a season ago before Caleb Johnson obviously emerged and had his All-American season. He's banged up, though, and he's dealing with a hamstring injury. And with hamstrings, you really never know. I mean, one little tweak again, and he can be out weeks, as we know, and regardless of the sport, how difficult that can be. If everybody is healthy, everybody's 100%, I truly believe that the backup running back is going to be Terrell Washington Jr., another guy. He's got a different kind of skill set, moved him back and forth. He's played that wide receiver position, but I really think that with his skill set, and if it came down to it, that he would be the number 2. You got a very solid, competent backup, though, in Jazion Patterson. We talked about he maybe doesn't have the wow factor. A couple years ago, Ames had that big run against the Cyclones before he got tracked down inside the 5-yard line. Still, he is a guy that is going to give you exactly what you expect, right? Good, solid, dependable, maybe not spectacular, but that's what you're going to get from Jazion Patterson. And then number 4, I think we have to say it is Nathan McNeil, that he is the guy from what we heard in the spring and now what we've seen and heard again in August camp, that it comes down to it. But that's the thing. If you have three running backs that are healthy in front of him, does it make more sense to put him at the redshirt level? Maybe you can get him a couple of carries. He can still play in 4 games and still maintain that redshirt. But what we heard, I think that's the way that it's looking right now with McNeil. Up next, let's look at the offensive line and what we saw back in the springtime with the offensive line. One big change I believe is going to happen is at left tackle. I do believe that Trevor Lauk is going to be the guy that wins the starting position at left tackle. The sophomore will be the guy who will win that job over Jack Doetzler. I understand it was just one practice that we saw. Still, I think he is going to be the guy that continues to be something to keep an eye on. One name that we didn't have on the depth chart going back to the spring was Bryce George, a guy competing for that left tackle spot. It looks like interior is going to be more likely from him, that it's not going to be the case, that he's certainly not going to win the starting job at left tackle. It doesn't look like right now he is going to be able to help out inside and be maybe at that left guard position, a guy that can be there. Bo Stevens is now back at practice. He is going to be the anticipated starter with the 21 career snaps that starts that he has at that left guard position. Logan Jones in the middle, as we know, Cade Pieper at right guard, and then Jennings Dunker, of course, out at right tackle. Mentioned this before, but keep an eye still on Michael Myslinski, finally healthy, and what he can do going forward. And remember, he has an extra year of eligibility that he can use if it comes down to that. So that is a look around some of the offensive weapons, but we finish finally at wide receiver. And this is the one that is probably the most interesting. So the way that they listed it back in spring, they did have 3 wide receivers that were listed. You can see it there on your screen on YouTube. At one of the spots, it was Reese Vandersee listed as a starter with Dayton Howard as his backup. Then at another spot, Seth Anderson was listed as a starter with KJ Parker as his backup. And then finally, Jacob Gillett, a starter, and Caden Weechin. I want to take it a step further, though, because all 6 of those guys are obviously in the running and trying to play here. If I had to rank these guys, and I also throw into the mix 2 other wide receivers that weren't listed, Jarrett Bowie and Sam Phillips. So if I was listing these guys 1 through 8, and that's what I'm going to do here, and it's not a knock on anybody, it's just the reality of this position. My number 1 guy is Reese Vandersee. Vandersee, number 1, what he's going to be is a red zone target, down the field target, big body, ability to go up and get those jump balls. He has the number 1 capability you're looking for. And again, a guy that's still learning the position, as we talk about with Vandersee. My number 2 is Seth Anderson. I get it. Everydayers, you've been saying it. I've heard your love for Seth Anderson for 3 years now. We got to see it. I get it. He's healthy. And when he has been out there, and yes, game 1 2 years ago, when he was on the scene, couple plays into the season, he catches a touchdown from Cade McNamara, and we felt like we were off and running. Seth Anderson has the speed. He has, we hope, the health, the ability, and the understanding of the wide receiver position. He's my number 2. Then you go next, dependable Jacob Gill. He's my number 3 guy on this list. Now, this is when it gets a little bit more fun, right? A little bit more interesting. Who is that number 4 receiver after the top 3? I'm going at number 4 with Sam Phillips. Transfers in, small guy, but speaking of knowing how to run routes, just the crisp routes that he runs. Dude understands the positions, got great speed. He is number 4. Next up on the list for me is KJ Parker. I got KJ Parker in that number 5 spot. We've just heard so much about him and talking about game-breaking ability. That is KJ Parker. Number 6 on the list is Jarrett Bowie. Bowie, who we saw a year ago, had 9 catches last year. He is at that spot. Number 7 then on the list is Caden Weechin. We know about the return ability. Can they find some different packages and doing things, not just on end arounds, not just on jet sweeps, but finding more for him? I got Dayton Howard number 8. And yet, I love Dayton Howard. I think he's got tremendous upside. 6'4", big-bodied receiver, had the touchdown a year ago. He is a guy that is continuing to trend upward. When Dayton Howard's your number 8 guy, there's times here over the last 5 years, Dayton Howard might have been Iowa's number 1. So there is my stab at the offensive depth chart, how I think it's going to look or how I think it is right now, subject to change. That's the way it always is. Let's go a little bit deeper into the defensive side of the ball. What the depth chart looked like in the spring, what it looks like now, at least how I see it in the Iowa football depth chart. Plus, we got a little basketball talk coming up as we continue on. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Stay right there. We're talking Hawkeye defense when we come back. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. Hey, you can take a flyer on so many different ways. The MVP race. Maybe it's Lamar Jackson's year after the tremendous year last year. That's who I'd be jumping on. Lamar getting it done for the Ravens this season. How about finding a champion? Last year, Kansas City made that deep run, or you can go even deeper. Are you a Bears fan? Boom. Make your pick. You're going to get good odds. Or parlay your division winners and find some dark horses. Visit FanDuel and the app right now today and start planning your future bets right now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We are your daily source of Iowa football talk, Iowa basketball talk, and whatever else is happening in the land of the Hawkeyes. And a big thank you to everydayers with us each and every day as we continue an updated look at the Iowa football depth chart and how it sits here today after what we saw in the spring and where we are at this moment in time. Let's take a quick peek at the defense from the spring depth chart and what we saw going back to the spring when this was released. I don't think there are a ton of changes at the defensive end position. The ones that we have to look at, though, is maybe in the middle. Your starters, Max Llewellyn, Aaron Graves, Jeremiah Pittman was listed as a starter, and Ethan Hurkett. So let's go right there and talk about this defensive line. And let's go first to this part of it. We know on the ends, it's going to be Hurkett, it's going to be Llewellyn. But remember also back in the spring, that Brian Allen was injured. We didn't see Brian Allen out there, and he did it again. It's an open practice. We know that Brian Allen's going to go nuts. What we saw in those glimpses a year ago, I believe he is going to be that number 3 defensive end. He is going to be in there. They're probably going to play him, as we saw last Saturday, a little bit inside, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and long situations. Maybe play him inside in a roll, get some of those reps down for the big guys. I think you're going to see plenty of that this season. I think Jonah Pace is going to be your starter opposite Aaron Graves, at least for the beginning of the season. Jeremiah Pittman trying to work his way back after the surgery. That's going to be a component to that. So I got Pace listed as a starter, Bryce Hawthorne as one of the backups behind him, and then Will Hubert as we await Pittman and trying to find his designation where he is and his return to health. So that's what we have on the defensive line. The thing that I absolutely love, though, is the depth of this team. We haven't talked about Kenneth Merriweather, who has shown glimpses of being a guy that's going to be helped out. Only a redshirt sophomore, redshirt freshman, Joseph Anderson on the outside. And of course, Yosei Epinesa and what he's going to be able to do. And we saw him running with the twos a little bit on Saturday. We saw it a couple of years back with AJ when he came onto the scene. He was a backup, but he elevated himself very quickly into that number 3 role. This defensive line group is a whole lot better than it was that season. So I don't think you're going to see Epinesa get the same amount of snaps that AJ did early in his career, but is he going to be part of the mix? Probably. And again, when you talk about redshirt anymore, and certainly a guy with the talent of Yosei Epinesa, any year where Hurkett and Llewellyn are going through their final year of eligibility, we know that there's going to be opportunities in a sophomore year. Does it make sense to even redshirt him? I don't think so. Get him out there. Even if he can only help you 8, 10, 12 snaps a game, he is still going to be part of that big future of what it's going to be for Yosei Epinesa. Let's go next over to the linebacker group, and certainly the most questioned group coming in to this season. So we go back, and here's a glimpse again at what we saw back in the spring. At the Leo spot, they had Jackson Rexroth with Derek Weisskopf as his backup. In the middle, Jaden Harrell and Jaden Montgomery. And then over at the Will side, it was Karson Sharar and Landon Van Kekricks. I think this is going to look very similar. The one I'd put in there with Weisskopf is certainly Preston Reese. I think he is certainly a guy that needs to be part of the mix. Consistency is what we continue to hear, not just with him, but with Weisskopf, with Reese, with Buffington, all three of those guys that are out there. It is about the consistency. I mentioned this before. The gap between Jaden Harrell and Jaden Montgomery is not significant. Harrell will get the first crack. He will be the guy, but Montgomery, if we do see some issues early on, he's going to get an opportunity as well. We also go back to what we've talked about so much with Karson Sharar. So Sharar is a player that has all the ability that you hope for. Good size, sideline to sideline speed. It's just exactly what you're hoping for. He's helped out on special teams. He's been able to do that, but now it's time to put it all together. It's not an ability question, but he also doesn't have a ton of reps. He hasn't been out there at the same kind of level as some different guys. Now he's wearing the right number, right? In 43, keep an eye out, because from what we saw on Saturday, Karson Sharar looks that he's not just going to be a guy that is holding court until the young guys are ready. This is a guy that in his only season as a starter, Karson Sharar can be a difference maker. All right, we continue and taking a look at this defense and what the depth chart, I believe, looks like right now. Let's go next to the defensive backfield and start at the cornerback position. So back in the spring, it looked like this. It was TJ Hall listed as one of the starters, Deshaun Lee as the other. Hall's backup was Jalen Watson, and Rashad Godfrey was the backup to Lee. And I think it's pretty similar at this point in time. We saw Alex Mota running around out there. Shaheed Barrows wasn't listed because he committed late the transfer from South Dakota. And we just didn't see a whole lot from Barrows that makes you believe that he's going to be able, at least right now, to jump any of those guys. Now, the question also remains for TJ Hall, is he going to be a player that's going to be healthy for Iowa? He took the step forward in the spring that you're hoping for, that consistency in his final go-around. Deshaun Lee, not a real big guy out there, listed at 5'10". Is he even that? Probably not. Still, Deshaun Lee is a guy that's had plenty of experience. He's played a ton. We'll see if it starts to click for him. Interested, though, Watson, Godfrey, two guys in the same class, came in. Godfrey redshirted last year because of special teams. Jalen Watson, he was a guy that did not maintain his redshirt status, so he is a true sophomore this year. It's going to be deep, but I don't think we have a whole lot of changes at that front. It's going to be up to Barrows of trying to figure this out, trying to hit the ground running at the cornerback spot. Over to safety, and this is where it gets interesting because you have, of course, the cash position. What do they do? Is it going to be Zach Lutmer or is it going to be Coing Entringer? You think of now over at free safety. Xavier Wampa transitions from strong safety, and he's mentioned it. He's just more comfortable at this spot. Xavier Wampa at this position, he's going to be better here. He is going to hopefully have the kind of season that maybe we thought we were going to see the last 2 years. I think you're going to get that from Wampa. Now, do you have Lutmer at the strong safety or do you have Coing Entringer? And when you're flip-flopping. Now, I think when they go to a traditional 4-3 with Jackson Rexroth as your starter out there at the Leo position, when that's a 4-3, yeah, it's going to be Entringer back there. But I just go back to the conversation I had with Cohen back in Vegas for Big Ten football media days and hearing him talk about the cash position. He mentioned all the different guys that have played this position, the importance of what Phil Parker's kind of done in creating that. That just sticks in my mind, that he is going to be the guy at cash, and then it'll be Lutmer that'll be at the strong safety. But we'll see how this is going to shake out, and still trying to kind of get that information of what that's going to look like. And then, of course, we wrap up with what we have at the specialist positions. Now, one thing that is a little bit different is the amount of depth just isn't there. It's a different kind of look to what we have, certainly historically, when Iowa's had so many different guys out there. We know who it's going to be, obviously. I mean, this one's easy. It's going to be Reese Dakin as your punter, Drew Stevens as your kicker. Caden Burr, is going to be the backup, the Bettendorf freshman that comes in. That's what you're going to have at the specialist positions. But now, this is only happening at an Iowa podcast, right? One of the position battles that we're still keeping an eye on is what happens at long snapper. That's right, guys. I'm not joking. We are talking long snappers. Welcome to off-season content. So Iowa back in the spring got a commitment from a Boston College transfer Bryant Worrell. So you got Worrell there, and then you have the heir apparent, what many people believe was going to be the guy this year, and that is Ike Speltz. So Speltz is a little bigger, smaller guy, where on the other hand, the BC transfer in Worrell, he's a little bit bigger. There's been talk going back to Friday and Iowa Media Day that maybe they could be splitting. That it turns out that Worrell is the guy on field goals, extra points, and then Speltz, because he's a little bit faster and can get down the field better, that Speltz will be the guy that is the long snapper for punts. Still be determined. You never know. That's where we are. An educated guess at the depth chart as we await for Iowa football. The countdown continues, and we got you covered here on Locked On Hawkeyes. But we're not done there. No, we got more to talk about, including the men's basketball team, what we anticipate, what it's going to look like, and some news and notes from the offseason for Iowa men's basketball and what's going to be a highly anticipated season. We'll talk hoops when we come back on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into the routine you love. I'll tell you, I love the sound of that. And Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. We recently picked up it's a gadget for your closet, basically to make everything fit in there a little bit easier. That's what we did with Wayfair. I absolutely love it. The quick delivery, the convenience, and knowing that the delivery was fast and free, even for something big for our closet and our home. It's a perfect time to get your home ready, organizing, upgrading, or making weeknights just a little bit easier. Get organized, refreshed, and back to routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's wayfair.com. WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. I want to talk some basketball here as we wrap things up. We have been so football heavy, and I love talking Iowa football with you. But this offseason for Iowa basketball, and credit to Coach McCollum. I hope to have him on the show one more time before the season begins and giving us some time here and what we've been able to hear. But want to go in and talk a little bit about some things that have been out there, some things that have been hearing about this group and the way that this offseason has gone. I want to start with the one returner, and that's Cooper Koch. Cooper, he had a season, his freshman year, that was just absolutely devastated by injury. And deciding to stick around, having the ability to get another year of eligibility. Remember, Cooper has 4 years of eligibility as he was able to redshirt with those injuries last season. His dad, JR, former Hawkeye player, drafted in the second round by the Knicks. And here's Cooper, a guy that's always been considered an elite shooter. And now you couple that with Ben McCollum, the way that he teaches defense. I think the sky's the limit for Cooper Koch. Remember, Cooper as a high school player, he was coveted by a lot of programs. Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State were all, in on him. And that's something Iowa doesn't normally win those kind of recruiting battles, but they did. And his dad went a long way for it. When you're talking about upside, you're talking about the future, Cooper Koch is going to be a big part of that. Bennett Stirtz, his ability to be a Swiss Army knife, everything that you need, I think is maybe at times overlooked. And just because he came with McCollum, remember, guys, we're talking about a guy that is potentially going to be a lottery pick. It's going to be a first rounder. It's going to be an All-American. I mean, all those kind of things in the preseason are coming his way. This is a guy that is a veteran, and maybe we're almost sleeping on just how good Bennett Stirtz is going to be. Now, your eyes are going to be open very quickly. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The upside is just so immense for Bennett Stirtz, and I think we got to remember, this dude is an absolute stud. Brendan Howson, finally back healthy. He's going to be really good for this team, and just, I think, a very good compliment for what Stirtz is. Sounds like he's shooting the ball really well. And one other guy, Trevin Urach. And I've talked about Trev a bunch because the background, living in West Des Moines, got to know his family back when Trevin was a little bit younger. And I'm rooting for him. I mean, I root for all the Hawkeyes, as you guys all know, but this is a little bit different. And what I hear about the work that he continues to put in, the skill set that he has, and I think the ability is going to be there much earlier than people think for him to help out this team in the middle, and he's going to be an important component. Um, it's an exciting year. It really is. And what they have and what this team is going to be built like, I think they're going to surprise people. I told you, I think the baseline is an NCAA tournament. Isaiah Howard is another guy I had on my list I wanted to talk about. Tate Sage, he's been a guy that's been talked about a ton. Trey Thompson, who they get early, he's going to help out. But Isaiah Howard, we talked about upside with Cooper Koch. And I think the same thing can be said for Isaiah Howard. If he can really hone in the shooting, he's got athleticism, he's got size, he can defend at a big level. But if the scoring and really the shooting ability, most importantly, comes along with it, the ability to do things off the bounce, Howard, when you're talking about upside, is definitely there. It's going to be a fun season of Iowa basketball. I think I want to see people back engaged, getting back to that level. One thing we're still waiting on, though, is what the full schedule is going to look like, because we're still waiting on that. We know they're going to be heading out to Palm Springs for their exempt tournament right before Thanksgiving. They'll get Ole Miss in the first round and then either Grand Canyon or Utah. Of course, they got the road trip to Iowa State this year on December 11th. That's a Thursday night affair. Open up the season against Robert Morris. But we're still waiting. And the game here in Des Moines, as they'll take on Bucknell, that is on a Saturday, December 20th. But that's where we are overall. Just trying to figure out what the schedule is going to look like. But I think you're going to really like this Iowa basketball team and the work that they're certainly putting in here in the off season. That'll do it for today. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Tom Kakert from Hawkeye Report as we take a look at Iowa football with Tom on tomorrow's show. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. I got you covered on the Hawkeye front, but it doesn't matter your favorite team. NFL, NBA, NHL, we have you covered here. MLB and a whole lot more. Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Bets with Lee Sterling, all here under the Locked On umbrella, your team every day. Thanks for being with us. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube, or a 5-star review if you're on the podcast side. All that helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.